With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yulana Weeks.
Our top stories.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Fire and Rescue Services celebrates International Women's Day with a symposium and appreciation ceremony.
St. Kitts and Nevis steps closer to single-use plastic ban with multi-agency support. St. Kitts and Nevis responds to U.S. visa restrictions on Cuba medical missions.
Marriage verification regulations in place to address sham marriage concerns in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Call for Antoine's resignation continues. Jamaican BPO staff at a center of fraudulent international concert ticket sales. Internationally, cartels loom over Mexico's new system of electing judges. Now, the details.
In commemoration of International Women's Day, St. Kitts and Nevis Fire and Rescue Services held a symposium for female fire officers at the Police Training School on March 7, 2025. The three main presenters at the event were Lanine Blanchett, Speaker of the National House of Assembly, Naima Hazel, Permanent Secretary in the Prime Minister's Office, and Michelle Sweet Sister Sensia Stokes, DJ and radio personality. Stokes encouraged the officers to cut out jealousy and favoritism and embrace teamwork.
And one of the things I live by, especially in my office, is three things with my staff. One is to cut out jealousy. Two, cut out favoritism, especially to the bosses. And three, teamwork. A lot of things I try to instill in my staff is that work together before it reaches to me. So instead of complaining on each other and making the matter worse, and the jealousy comes into play because there's favoritism, let's work together and find the solutions, because I don't want to hear about the problems. If there's a problem, bring the solutions to me along with the problem. Tell us how we can work around this to make things happen. You understand? And for me, it builds a strong team. And as women, I know it's hard to work in a place with a lot of women, because sometimes it could come with drama, jealousy, energy. You understand? And in order for you guys to work better together, you have to love what you do, appreciate who you are, and appreciate the surroundings. So if you find that there's a woman who has a problem, help her.
Hazel admonished the fire officers to acknowledge challenges, embrace strengths, and congratulate themselves.
So sometimes we have to recognize our strengths. We have to think about sometimes there's challenging situations. You're going to have some challenging situations in your jobs. How did you handle those situations? A lot of the times we talk about, oh, I'm really going through it. Oh, how are you doing? All times it's hard. Remember when I first came home and I used to say, oh, it's good, I'm having a good day. People say, stop telling people you're having a good day. When people ask you, must say times are hard, people don't like to hear you're having a good day. I'm a pretty joyful person. It's very hard for me to be acting like I'm having a bad day. Even if I'm having a bad day, I can find a joy in it. Something good happened that day that I can give God thanks for. So a lot of the times we don't always recognize our strengths. We don't look at the things we're proud of. We don't look at the life lessons that have left us stronger and more resilient. So yes, you say, oh, look, that girl, she's doing very well for herself. Oh, look, you see the speaker, she's doing very well for herself. They don't know what the speaker went through before she became speaker. They don't know what we went through. I was home 6 years. That's all right. I used those 6 years. It's all right. It's okay. I used those 6 years to do something meaningful for children. You know, sometimes things fail. Marriages fail, relationships fail, jobs end. But at the end of the day, it's not really what you're going through. It's the fact that you're going to get through it. You don't say, oh, I'm stuck in it. Oh, what's happening? Oh, this is the thing. You get through it. So we always have to know that at the end of the tunnel, it might take slow steps, but we're going to get through it. And then we have to congratulate ourselves.
Blanchett emphasized that when women support each other and work together, much can be accomplished. She urged the officers to continue to push for equality and inclusion.
No, when women support each other, incredible things happen. We create environments of peace, courage, and empowerment. We foster innovation, we strengthen collaboration, and we inspire growth. Not just for ourselves, but for the entire organization within which we work. Now, as we reflect on and celebrate International Women's Day, it is important to reflect on the fact of as women. We must give ourselves credit for the hard work that we do. We reflected on that. You must be accountable and identify how far you still have to go. International Women's Day serves as a global reminder of strength, resilience, and achievements of women everywhere. It's also a call to action, to continue pushing for equality, education and support in every corner of society, especially the workplace.
In speaking to Divisional Fire Officer Mavis Archibald after the event, she expressed that a prime challenge that women face in the service is marginalization. She pleaded with existing and prospective female fire officers to embrace training and learning, advising that there are many opportunities to empower themselves.
Well, just be honest, be willing to learn, and do not refuse training. Do not refuse. And a lot of persons take this for granted. Oh, I don't want to. But I have never refused to be trained in any way. And I have massed training. I am a trained EMT. I do a lot of things. I was trained in hazmat. I was trained in a lot of things. And that's because I just had a desire to learn and not to stay one place. I just wanted to go forward and keep going.
So there's a lot of opportunities within the fire department for women as well.
Yes, if you apply yourself.
The St. Kitts Nevis Fire and Rescue Services, which is also celebrating its 25th anniversary as an independent body, used the opportunity to honor its presenters, the female fire officers, and other women within the community who have contributed to the work of the organization. They each received a certificate and a sparkling cider. Presentations were made by Miss Curtis Keynes, the first female force personnel officer attached to the fire department.
St. Kitts and Nevis is advancing its phased ban on single-use plastics with collaborative effort across multi-government agencies and support from the business community. The Honourable Dr. Joel Clark, Minister of Sustainable Development, Environment and Climate Action and Constituency Empowerment, expressed gratitude to the media, consumers, the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, and other business entities for supporting the government's ban of single-use T-shirt shopping bags. Minister Clark emphasized that the transition requires more than just governmental intention, highlighting the necessity of supporting legislation.
We recognize that the shift requires more than just government saying what its intention is, but legislation also needs to support the single-use plastic ban. And so the Attorney General has confirmed that we will have a plastic legislation or regulation bill ready for the ban. The Minister of Trade will also be presenting to us and to the nation the international standards for biodegradable alternatives that all retailers and wholesalers can access to purchase the biodegradable options for importing to St. Kitts and Nevis.
Dr. Clark noted the collaborative nature of this initiative, involving Customs and Excise, the Ministry of Finance, the Bureau of Standards, the Ministry of Environment, and the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. This ensures that the approach, deadlines, timelines, and education campaign all support a shift in action. Dr. Clark stressed the importance of matching legislation policy and political will to transition to a sustainable island state, emphasizing the need for people of St. Kitts to be on board.
If we are to become and transition to a sustainable island state, then definitely we need matching legislation, we need policy, and we need political will, which is very evident from this cabinet, from this government, and we need the people of St. Kitts to be on board. So
the ban on single-use plastic T-shirt bags is set to take effect on March 31st, 2025, ending the ban's first phase. Phase 2 involves a ban on importing styrofoam food containers and plastic straws effective April 30th, 2025. Then the sale and distribution of those same items will be banned on July 31st, 2025. The final phase will ban the importation of single-use plastic cups, plates, and utensils on August 31st, 2025, followed by the ban on the sale and distribution of the same products on November 30th, 2025. During the Prime Minister's press conference on March 6th, Dr. Clark also acknowledged the presence of colleagues from Island Innovation who are bringing over 300 people to St. Kitts and Nevis for the Global Sustainable Island Summit. She highlighted the significance of hosting the summit.
We're bringing 300 plus folk to St. Kitts and Nevis, and they are coming here when we have our plastic ban. They are coming here to talk about sustainability, food security, water security, energy transition, and What better way to greet 300 persons who are interested, island nations who are interested in sustainability, than to come to a country where single-use plastic is no longer the norm?
The summit is scheduled for May 25th through 30th, 2025. During a press conference on March 6, 2025, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Llewellyn Douglas, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade, Industry and Commerce, Consumer Affairs, Economic Development and Investment, addressed the United States' recent visa restrictions targeting Cuba's Overseas Medical Mission program. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced an expansion of the policy, which now includes foreign government officials and their families from countries participating in these programs. The decision has sparked significant concern across the Caribbean region. Dr. Douglas characterized the issue as one of grave importance, emphasizing that St. Kitts and Nevis, along with its regional partners, has approached it with the utmost seriousness.
This is a matter that we have taken very, very seriously as a government and also as a region.
He also highlighted that Caribbean foreign ministers recently convened to discuss the implications of the U.S. policy, underscoring a collective effort to evaluate existing agreements with the Cuban government.
On examination, we would want to make sure that the agreements do not in any way support what the U.S. is accusing, that these persons are really being dehumanized because they are working hard in our countries, according to the U.S., in perception, and they're not being adequately paid because the money is being paid to the Cuban government in order to sustain the status quo in Cuba. We, again, in St. Kitts and Nevis, want to make it very clear to the world that we are not part and parcel of this type of practice as has been accused.
Specifically, these evaluations aim to ensure that bilateral arrangements on medical personnel comply with international norms and human rights guidelines amidst U.S. accusations of forced labor. The U.S. alleges that Cuban overseas medical missions serve as a vehicle for exploitative and coercive labor practices that disproportionately benefit the Cuban government at the expense of individual workers. Secretary of State Marco Rubio emphasized that the U.S.'s stance targets not only the Cuban regime but also extends accountability to foreign governments allegedly complicit in such practices. Quote, Cuba continues to profit from the forced labor of its workers, and the regime's abusive and coercive labor practices are well documented. The United States is committed to countering forced labor practices around the globe. To do so, we must promote accountability not just for Cuban officials responsible for these policies, but also those complicit in the exploitation and forced labor of Cuban workers, Rubio stated in his announcement. Dr. Douglas sought to assure global partners that St. Kitts and Nevis remains committed to upholding human rights and ethical employment practices. Referencing Cuban personnel employed within the Federation, he clarified,
We understand that there are some of the doctors who are here with us from Cuba who have direct employment relationship with the government of St. Kitts and Nevis without the input of the government of Cuba.
He added that while 11 professionals are here under agreements involving the Cuban government, steps would be taken to ensure their human rights are respected. Dr. Douglas further highlighted future engagements with U.S. State Department officials in Washington, D.C. and consul generals in Miami to address these emerging concerns, demonstrating the active effort to resolve potential disputes amicably. The visa restrictions announced by the United States present far-reaching implications, extending beyond limitations on individual travelers to also encompass government officials. This expansion has heightened apprehension across the Caribbean as it threatens to strain diplomatic relations between the U.S. and countries benefiting from Cuban medical missions. In St. Kitts and Nevis, Cuban doctors and medical personnel play a critical role in supporting the local healthcare system, a reality mirrored in many other small island states in the region. In the wake of these developments, the Caribbean community appears unified and is pressing for a measured approach to resolving this issue. Dr. Douglas underscored the region's collective stance.
This is a very serious matter because you're not talking only about restricting visa to the ordinary traveler, but to government officials as well. And so the entire Caribbean community is highly concerned about this matter, and we are treating it with the highest regard, at the highest level, so that we will be able to arrive at a solution to this emerging issue.
As discussions between Caribbean nations and U.S. officials proceed, attention remains focused on achieving a balanced resolution that respects sovereignty while addressing human rights concerns.
What has been described as sham marriages in St. Kitts and Nevis have birthed new regulations for persons who are expecting to gain citizenship through marriage. At the March 6 Prime Minister's press conference, Attorney General Garth Wilkins said that marriage verification is the new order of the day for persons who are seeking citizenship through marriage, following the widely circulated sham marriage concerns raised by the government.
We immediately have decided to end that process. And informally, what was done is that in the Ministry of National Security, there was verification of marriages. So when a person applied, they weren't automatically granted the citizenship through the marriage. There were officers in the ministry who then went to verify that the marriage was legitimate. The law actually says that the minister is not to grant citizenship if they believe that it is a marriage of convenience, meaning that there was money exchanged for the marriage. So that informal process then evolved in July last year into actual regulations which now govern the process of applying to become a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis through marriage.
Wilkins said that since July 2024, marriage verification officers attached to the Ministry of National Security have been assigned to investigate whether marriages are legitimate.
When a person applies, the ministry assigns a marriage verification officer to the case. That marriage verification officer then conducts investigations, interviews. They can show up to your house, see if you have pictures of you, your wife and a dog, to determine whether it's actually a legitimate marriage. And they can also look at additional information.
Approximately 1,200 cases of marriage of convenience were suspected shortly after the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party administration took public office in 2022. Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew was adamant in addressing the issue and requested the assistance of the Attorney General's chambers.
We discovered that there was a sham marriage industry that was happening between counsel, lawyers, and the ministry at the time. And when a list was compiled of the potential sham marriages, and when I say sham marriages, I mean marriages by which one person being a citizen received money from another person who is not a citizen to get married, and then that person would get their citizenship, get their passport the same day, and register to vote either the same or the next day. We discovered that there were potentially approximately 1,200 incidents of this in the Federation.
Now that the regulations are implemented, the Director of Public Prosecutions is expected to progress with the sham marriages investigation. One person has been charged to date.
Now that we have done so by regulations, which have the force of law, it is now for the DPP to do their investigation. There is currently one person that is already charged with an offense in relation to sham marriages, and that matter is progressing through the court system. Everybody has an opportunity to access natural justice, and the rule of law applies to everyone. So it is up to the authorities to then investigate and determine if any decisions need to be made in relation to the potentially 1,200 plus sham marriages that we met when we took office.
In regional news, call for Antoine's resignation continues. Grenada Broadcasting Network reports.
I want to endorse and adopt the revulsion and utter despicable actions as expressed by the Prime Minister of St. Vincent, Ralph Gonsalves. Thank God he's still around to at least give some supreme guidance to the conduct of such persons when they fall out of line. He's in that tradition, and I wish to adopt his recommendation, having regard to all the surrounding circumstances, that the governor of the bank should tender his resignation.
That was attorney Anselm Clouden endorsing concerns raised by Vincentian Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves regarding the multi-million-dollar investment in a permanent residence for the governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank in St. Kitts. Beyond pushing for Antoine's resignation, Clouden is calling for a full investigation into how the multi-million-dollar project was approved, stressing the need for transparency in the management of regional funds.
The most important step I suggest ought to be taken now is an investigation into the minutes of the meeting of the council that would have endorsed such a lavish residence at the expense of each and every taxpayer of the subscribing states within the ECCB. There's no dispute that we need a suitable residence for the governor of the bank, but not a residence that exceeds the ambit of reasonable appropriation of the region's money.
The controversy has sparked wider concerns about how the ECCB's Monetary Council allocates funds, with Clouden questioning whether the decision was made in the best interest of citizens across the Eastern Caribbean. Clouden also took aim at the stark contrast between extravagant government spending and the economic hardships many Caribbean people face.
They're custodians. They have a fiduciary relationship to us, citizens, and they cannot squander the funds that are given to them for investment purposes, transnational investment. Invest in US bonds, invest in Canadian securities and the like. And this is how our currency remains stable. So that attorney generals should look at whether it is possible to introduce some sort of legal action on the basis of misfeasance. This situation that has developed needs to be looked into by regional leaders and determine whether, in fact, a residence, well, it's akin to a palace, befitting for a king, should be used by the governor of the bank. It sends a distorted signal to the population at large, most of which are struggling people, living from day to day on their paychecks, and paying their taxes, and whether their money should be squandered by those who want to acquire the type of extravagant and lavish lifestyle for themselves.
Reporting for GBN News, Nisha Paul.
Jamaican BPO staff at a center of fraudulent international concert ticket sales. Television Jamaica has that story.
The Taylor Swift Eras Tour was one of the highest grossing tours of all time, generating a record $2 billion held over 21 months. The demand for tickets was high, and with scammers attempting to cash in, Jamaicans were at the center. This week, 20-year-old Tyrone Rose and 31-year-old Shamara Simmons were charged with second-degree grand larceny, first-degree and fourth-degree computer tampering, and fourth-degree conspiracy. They are accused of stealing nearly 1,000 tickets for concerts and other high-profile events. U.S. prosecutors allege Rose was among Jamaicans employed to Sutherland Global in Jamaica, who redirected purchased tickets to the emails of Simmons and another accomplice based in Queens, New York. This happened between June 2022 and July 2023. It's further understood that the co-conspirators then downloaded the tickets and resold them on StubHub at inflated prices, raking in in more than $600,000. According to U.S. media reports, Rose was apprehended while he was visiting New York and was ordered to surrender his passport. He and Simmons pleaded not guilty when they appeared in court earlier this week. Their next court date is Friday. They each face a maximum sentence of 3 to 15 years in prison if convicted on the top count. StubHub told USA Today on Tuesday that the company identified all orders impacted by the scheme and either replaced or fully refunded the orders. The company noted that it also terminated its relationship with Sutherland Global Services. USA Today further quotes StubHub's legal chief, who stated that upon discovering this criminal scheme, it was immediately reported to the third-party customer service vendor Sutherland Global Services, as well as the Queens District Attorney's Office and Jamaica law enforcement. He is further quoted as saying that the individuals who are involved, employees of Sutherland Global Services, exploited a system vulnerability to fraudulently resell tickets. They were swiftly identified and terminated. Kerry-Ann Simpson, TVJ News.
We now bring you these international reports.
The sandy beaches in Acapulco in the Mexican state of Guerrero seem idyllic, but this state is a dangerous place to be a candidate for office. In October, the newly sworn-in mayor of the state capital, Chilpancingo, Alejandro Arcos, was brutally murdered and decapitated. Last year, Mexico endured the bloodiest political elections in its modern history. 37 candidates were assassinated, which human rights monitors largely link to organised crime. As part of an overhaul of the country's judicial system, thousands more candidates will vie for federal judge and magistrate positions in 2025. Sparking fears candidates will be easy targets. A former president of the highest court in Guerrero State was killed in a parking lot at his workplace by gunmen in December last year. Minimal security guarded the courthouse when Reuters visited to interview the former Guerrero's Judges Association president, Inocente Orduno.
Undoubtedly, every judge is at risk of suffering an attack due to the decisions we make.
At least 22 local judicial professionals have been killed in Mexico since 2012, according to think tank Mexico Evalúa. They found at least 4 killings to be motivated by the judge's work. Ramiro Solorio, an Acapulco mayoral candidate, started receiving death threats ahead of last year's election. He was given National Guard protection, but he says that level of security is not sustainable.
No haber policía suficiente que esté atrás.
There will not be enough police to follow each candidate. The best thing is to establish a security system. How? By going after criminals. How? By solving cases of homicides, arresting those responsible. To have zero impunity, that is the best guarantee.
Esa es la mejor garantía.
Mexico is up against a budget crunch and a depleted National Guard as it focuses on collaboration with the United States at its shared border.
A South Korean court cancelled impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol's arrest warrant on Friday. This could pave the way for his release from jail, while he faces trial on insurrection charges. Yoon's arrest stemmed from his brief imposition of martial law last year, which stunned South Koreans as he declared on national television his aim to root out anti-state forces. Friday's ruling was based on Yoon's indictment coming after his initial detention period had expired and questions about the legality of the investigation. Seoul Central District Court said in a statement. The court did not dismiss the criminal charges that led to Yoon's arrest on January 15. This case is separate from his impeachment, still pending before the Constitutional Court. After the announcement, members of Yoon's ruling party gathered near his official residence, celebrating the ruling. Yoon's lawyers and presidential office said the ruling showed that the case had been pursued for political purposes, with no legal justification. The prosecutor's office did not immediately comment. Legal experts said that the district court's decision was not a vindication for Yoon, but did raise questions about the integrity of the indictment. Arguments ended in the separate impeachment trial last week. The court was expected to issue a decision in the next few days on whether to remove Yoon from office permanently or reinstate him. If Yoon is removed, a new presidential election will be held within 60 days to elect a new leader.
A single plate of beans is all that Leila has been able to prepare for her family to break their Ramadan fast at the evening iftar meal. Displaced from her home in Western Omdurman in the Sudanese capital, she and her family now live in a displacement center. She says this holy month of Ramadan is unlike any she's observed before.
In past Ramadans, I was able to prepare lots of types of food for my family. Even the previous Ramadan was better than this. There was more food for iftar. People gave donations to displaced people. But this year there's hardly been any assistance, so I feed my family what I can.
She's one of many families here who've been forced to flee by the conflict between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. They've been in this displacement center for nearly 2 years. The fighting began in April 2023. It's not only people who've been displaced by the war who are struggling during the month of Ramadan. Many people lost their jobs when the conflict began and can no longer afford market prices. Overall, the conflict has left more than half of Sudan's 48 million people in need of food assistance to survive. For some, the only way to get an iftar meal is from community kitchens like this one. Amira worked 2 jobs before the conflict. While she hasn't been forced from her home, she lost both jobs and now relies on assistance from this community kitchen.
Last year, despite the conflict, I was able to buy food for me and my son. This year, if it wasn't for this kitchen, I wouldn't be able to get a meal for iftar.
Those who run the kitchen say 2 years of conflict has taken a toll, both on displaced families and the communities that host them.
We fed 180 families last Ramadan. This year we're feeding 280 because those who haven't been displaced are often the only breadwinners in their families. And after 2 years, putting food on the table is just too hard. So we provide them with food for iftar so that they can fast the next day as well.
Leila hopes one day she'll be able to prepare iftar meals for her family the way she used to. But as long as the fighting continues, she says things are likely to get tougher, and soon she may not be able to put even a single plate on her Ramadan mat. Hiba Morgan, Al Jazeera, Khartoum.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were:
The St. Kitts and Nevis Fire and Rescue Services celebrates International Women's Day with a symposium and appreciation ceremony.
St. Kitts and Nevis steps closer to single-use plastic ban with multi-agency support. St. Kitts and Nevis responds to U.S. visa restrictions on Cuba medical missions.
Marriage verification regulations in place to address sham marriage concerns in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Call for Antoine's resignation continues. Jamaican BPO staff at a center of fraudulent international concert ticket sales. Internationally, cartels loom over Mexico's new system of electing judges.
Thank you for listening.